Hi everybody, it's Laura. Thank you so much for joining me on my channel. Today I have a layout that I made for a Punched Out Thursday to die for. I made this layout when I was away at a weekend crop. I brought a My Creative Scrapbook kit with me that's from a while back, and there wasn't much left in the kit because I made quite a few layouts using it, but there was one sheet of pattern paper and there were lots and lots of strips of paper, and also there were some embellishments. So I'm going to combine all of those things to make a layout. And of course, these little pieces of paper didn't start out as strips. I took whatever scraps were left over, and then I used my paper trimmer and I cut whichever ones were still big enough to be made into a strip into whatever size strip I could make out of it. And now I'm going to combine them on this piece of white cardstock. I like to draw angles on my paper when I'm adding strips to them to help guide me in adding the strips and making sure that I'm keeping them at a consistent angle. But I don't know what I was thinking. I drew the angle at the top of the page differently than I drew the one at the bottom of the page. So by the time I got down to the bottom of the page, I realized that that angle is much different. So I just ignored that pencil line and continued to add the strips of paper the way I had started. I hope that that makes sense. And these strips of paper, as I said, they were all from a My Creative Scrapbook kit from a while back. They included papers from a Blue Fern Studio collection called Christmas Cheer, and also from a 49 and Market collection called Peace and Joy. And you can see that they're both Christmas themed. So this is the one piece of paper that I had left over, and I have a piece of black cardstock. I gutted the center, and now I'm adding some adhesive to the edges of the pattern paper, which I cut down just a little bit just so you'd be able to see that black border. And now I'm going to attach my strip of paper down the center, but I thought for consistency I would also mount that strip on some black cardstock. When I'm done with this layout, other than a couple of strips of paper and some embellishments, I totally killed this kit, and I love the feeling of using up an entire kit. It's such a good feeling, and I feel like I didn't have as many embellishments and choices left when I got down to the last piece of paper, of course, but I was able to use my punches and my dies in order to add some embellishing and some features to the layout. I feel like as long as you have some pattern paper, you can always use your dies and your punches to create elements to include on your page. And it's not like it's not amazing to have beautiful embellishments to put on your page, but if you don't have those, I feel like if you have a little bit of extra time, you can always make some. So I wanted to also mat my photo on some black cardstock once again, so everything would be cohesive on the layout. But I decided I wanted to make it just a really thin border of black. And then I wanted to pop up my photo on some foam to give it a little bit of dimension. I'm using some adhesive fun foam. And I'm keeping the foam back from the edge just a little bit, just so you don't see this purpley pink color when you look at the layout. It definitely wouldn't match. Then I add some ATG adhesive, but I'm going to go back and add some wet glue. First, I just want to make sure that I like where everything is positioned. So I believe that I won this set of stickers. This is from Simple Stories. It's Christmas themed, and I thought that I would try to include a couple of these elements on my layout. These are the foam stickers, which I really love. I think that they stick really well, which is always great, and they have some dimension, which I love. I go to these scrapbooking weekends about 3 times a year. I really love them. They're run by Girls Gone Scrappin', and there are always lots of prizes to be won. I don't always win prizes, but there are lots of opportunities to win them. And they have a basket, and usually you get to choose something from the basket, and it's really hard for me to choose because there's always so many good things in there. But it wasn't hard this time because I knew that I wanted to add just a couple of little things to this layout. So I knew to pick that Christmas themed sticker set, and I could see that it went along really well with the papers that I already have. I think that that's one great thing about Christmas scrapbooking. Not all the collections go together, but I find that a lot of the collections can be interchanged and mixed and matched because, of course, the red and the green are prominent in a lot of collections. Well, I used an EK Success scalloped border punch. You can see that this is a pretty big scallop that I love to use. I always bring it with me when I go on crops to cut out some of the strips of pattern paper that I had left. I cut some strips out of an off-white paper, and then I also had some strips of red paper, and so I decided that I would add a little bit of contrast to the white paper by putting a little border of the red right behind it. And it took me a little while to layer those two borders on top of each other the way that I wanted to, but once I got them positioned, I tucked that piece underneath the center strip, and then I trimmed it to size. And then I did the same thing with the other strips of paper. So now I have a scalloped border on both sides of my photo. Next, I added a tab to the right-hand side of my photo. This tab's a little bit bigger than some of the other 49 and market tabs, but I'm going to stamp my date on here once I get home. I don't have my date stamp with me at the crop. And then I wanted to add a little something on the right-hand side of the layout. And I had this piece of pattern paper that had some trees on it. So I fussy cut the trees out, and I'm going to tuck those underneath the scalloped border. Even though I already glued them down, I was able to work that in there. So I liked the way that it looked. I added a little bit of adhesive, and then I pressed that down. Now I'm using another punch, and I tend to use this punch on a lot of layouts, even when it's not a Punched Out Thursday to die for. This is my EK Success Scalloped Photo Corner Punch. I punched out a corner for each of the corners of the photo. I like to add ink to things like photo corners and other embellishments on the page, but I didn't remember to bring one of my green Distress Oxides, so I borrowed this ink. It's called Ink It Up. I don't have the name of the color. Thank you, Sue, for lending that to me, and it worked perfectly to ink all of the photo corners. I wanted to add a little bit of embellishment to the title, so I'm playing around with some of the smaller foam stickers from that same pack that I used earlier. So I picked some leaves to go on either side of the word joyful, and then I picked out a heart to go right on top of that word. I'm again using the Ink It Up ink to ink the edges of 3 sentiments that I am going to include underneath my photo. One says December, another one says the most magical season, and then finally the last one says days to remember. I'm taking each of those sentiments and I am attaching them down to some thick white cardstock to make them a little bit more sturdy. And then I use some more of that fun foam and I pop each of them up on some foam. And I like the way the sentiments are all different lengths. They're also different thicknesses. I think that makes it more interesting than just having 3 sentiments that are the same length and the same width. When they are all the same, I try to stagger them a little bit, but this makes it a lot easier that they're all different sizes. I add some ATG adhesive and I will have to go back and glue these down so they don't fall off of the page. And then I borrowed that heart from the top of the layout because I wanted 2 hearts that matched and I really liked the red ones. So I added those, one at the beginning of the sentiments and one where they kind of end. And then I added another slightly larger heart to the top over the title. And come to think of it, it seems that I didn't even use the heart that I borrowed from the top of the page. I decided to use a smaller one so the 2 hearts would be the same size. Now I'm going to start working on my flowers. I used some dies. I put them at the top of my mat so you can see them. I know the ones on the left are Spellbinders dies. I'm not sure about the ones on the right. I don't know what brand they are, but they're very similar. And I cut out a whole bunch of poinsettias from some of the red and white pattern paper that I had left. And it was really just scraps, so I tried to do my best to cut complete flowers out of those pieces that I had. And now I'm using some gel glue and I'm layering them on top of each other. I should mention that I used some Distress Oxides to ink the edges. That way they would all look cohesive. For the smaller flowers, I layered a couple of the same size flowers on top of each other, and for the larger ones I started out with large flowers and then I put smaller ones and then the smallest one in the center, and I made sure that I offset the flowers from each other so they would look full, and then I spent a little bit of time kind of ruffling them up to give them a little bit of dimension. Oh, and the names of the Distress Oxide colors that I used are Crackling, Campfire, and Candied Apple. I arranged the poinsettias in 3 different clusters. I have a larger cluster at the top, a medium one on the right side, and then a smaller one at the bottom where I have those sentiments. And once again, I used some gel glue to attach all of them down to the page. And If you've watched my videos before, you may know that I am always a little hesitant about using wet glue to attach things down to the page because it's very hard to go back and change things. So I made sure that I liked the placement before I added the glue. Before I went on this crop, I planned a little bit better than I usually do. I die cut out a whole bunch of pine needles or pine branches in a couple of different sizes and shapes. I have a couple of different pine branch dies. And I often use heat embossing to make branches like this kind of stand out. But this time I found that I had some papers that had a pearl or iridescent finish. So I decided to use those. And as I said, I die cut out a whole bunch of them. And then I added them to each of the clusters. I am mainly adding the ones that are a little bit larger, but I also work in some of the smaller ones too. And I'm sorry, you could see that I'm gesturing with my hands because I'm chatting with my friends at the table as I'm creating. I love going to weekend crops. I find them so much fun. The only drawback is that if I'm not feeling very creative for a period of time, I end up shopping. There are so many shopping opportunities. There's a table where people will put the items they don't want anymore and they sell them at really great prices. And that tends to be where you'll find me because I always find really great things there. And then there are also several vendors that are usually there. Stampin' Up! Is there. There is a person that sells those, I think they're called 39 bags. I hope that's the right number. They have those available. There's also Connecticut scrapbooks. There's a large area with items from Amanda. And then there are also times when there's a lady there who sells some die cut titles. So lots to do, even if you're not in the mood to scrapbook. So here I am back at home. I have all of those pine branches attached down with some gel glue. And then I added my date using my date stamp. And then I wanted to add a little something to the centers of the poinsettias, but I didn't have just the right jewel with me. So I'm using some Queen and Company jewels. I have had these in my stash for a really, really long time, but I thought they were just the right size and color to go in the centers of my flowers. And now I'm using some self-adhesive pearls and I'm adding those to the 3 visible photo corners. And that is the last touch, and this layout is complete. Thank you so much for watching this video, everybody. I hope you enjoyed this Punched Out Thursday to Die For. Please don't forget to look in the description box where you'll find the links to the channels of Ronnie, Sue, Kathy, and Sonia, where you'll find some other Punched Out Thursday to Die For videos and lots of other great videos too. I hope you have a fantastic day, and I hope to see you again soon. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.